Okay, so today we are, looks like we have another person joining us. Today we are talking about multiple offers, whether you are on the buyer side or whether you are on the listing side. So right now, I think the majority of you that I see on here have had at least one transaction before as a buyer, right? Yes, no, maybe so. If you cannot talk, I said Jill has her microphone's not working, so that's okay. I ask a lot of participatory questions. I'll pre-warn you guys. Um, so one of the things, especially for those that have not had a transaction yet, this would be really some great information on some of the things that are going to happen uh, in regards to etiquette, because I think sometimes we talk about the legalities of it and the technicalities, but we never really talk about the etiquette of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah. Paige, have you had to deal with that before where somebody really didn't handle multiple offer situation well?
right. They were kind of rude because they knew they had it in contract. They were going to have it in contract and either didn't respond to my emails and phone calls or to get more information to write the contract,
Yeah, yeah. Or they didn't notify everybody else that there was something going on and that there were other offers, or they just tried to play coy, which really, really, really gets me. So one of the things I want to talk about today, we're going to talk about buyer section side first, then we're going to talk about the listing side first, because it's definitely different angles for it. And in this market, we also know that not always the biggest best like the biggest price is going to be the best offer for your clients. Like we all know this. So looking at it from a buyer side, right now, markets is really hot, especially for homes that are under like with that 250 range. Can everyone kind of agree with that one? We see them go fairly quickly, especially if they are good standing. They have they're decent, they're slightly updated. They don't have to be top of the line, but move-in ready. They're not going to have to completely renovate and gut the entire thing. So when we have a multiple offer situation, going into it, we kind of have to play to our strengths. So what are some strategies that you guys have found that have worked for you? And what are some strategies that you've learned that have not worked well for you? I'll throw the first one out there. Contingencies, huge thing. So if you have a client that, let's say their budget is 200,000 on a 190 listing, they can go up and over asking by 10 grand. What is the number one thing that you're worried about when you go over asking?
the
Starts with an
appraisal.
A. Yes, appraisal. Is it going to appraise? Because we know for those that are brand new, that if it doesn't appraise, then you have to meet either somewhere in the middle, your client walks away, or has to bring money to the table to meet that number. So that's why you'll see later on that sometimes the highest price isn't the best one. So a contingency could be a waiver of remediation request, which would be a great thing, meaning that they are waiving their right to have like to request anything. They're basically saying, hey, we hold to our 6.4 or whatever line that is for inspection, and if anything is absolutely terrible or beyond what we are willing to accept, we have the right to walk away, but we're not going to ask for you guys to repair anything. The benefits on this one are innumerable. It makes it a smoother transaction. Your clients know it's going to be easier, and it's going to be less work for your sellers to have to deal with. Another one that we're coming to find is super popular, especially in those lower home ranges, are the waiver of appraisal. So what are some cons you can see with that though?
Meet the appraisal gap, like having to
Yeah,
bring more money to the table, especially low price. You usually don't have the cash to like come up with that.
exactly. So those are conversations you're going to have with your clients ahead of time. Um, just as throwing it out there, what is a great way that you would approach that with a client? We have two new people. I think Raneem just joined us, and Christina, you're here as well. So what are some things that you guys have come across, or how would you approach that conversation? Because it's not just about writing contracts. It's about also having those open dialects or open conversations with your clients to make sure that you are on the same page as them and you're able to do your due diligence. Jill, you had probably have had to handle this before in the past with multiple offers as well. And having that conversation can be a little uncomfortable. to say the least. So when we set expectations with our clients and we say something along the lines of, okay, this is what your budget is. We know that their max budget is going to be 205. We find properties between the 190 to 205 range, and we know to prep them and say, oh my gosh, there's a cat on the screen. Sorry, Paige, I got distracted.
I know, he always has to join in. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Sorry, I got distracted by cat people. Sorry. But we always have to say, as our expectations are set with those clients, I would like you to make you aware it's a very hot market right now. So within this price point, we're going to have to be flexible with our terms and our conditions, so that if we're not able to bring more money to the table, we may have to be flexible in what those terms are. And you can lay out what your contingencies may be. The other thing we forget to always kind of think about sometimes is when I call the other listing agent and my client's interested in making an offer, I always ask the questions, do you have any other offers on the table? And I phrase it this way: what are some terms and conditions that your clients are going to find most favorable in regards to a contract? I don't ask them to tell me what other numbers people are giving, because they're not going to. I don't try to weasel a lot of specific details, because oftentimes they're not going to want to share that. But what I'm asking is, what is going to be the most favorable? What can I do to ensure my client's going to get this home? Whether it be an extension between possession and closing, whether it be we close in 45 days as opposed to 30 because they're still trying to find a house to purchase. There's a lot of other terms that we can get super creative with. And on the flip side of looking as a listing agent, client or agents that ask me that, I find that they are doing more due diligence for their clients than those that just write an offer without talking to me. Have you guys found this before? Yeah.
Yeah, I was taught, like, you never write an offer without contacting the listing agent and having that conversation. And on the flip side, because you want to have that rapport going with them.
Exactly. And one thing I definitely want to bring up, and this has nothing to do with multiple offers, but about offers in general, please do not, for the love of God, especially my PC people, because I will find you and I will hunt you down, write a sloppy offer. Meaning, make sure your information is completely filled out, because you could have almost the exact same offer as somebody else, but if yours is basically half-baked and not completed, you're not presenting a super professional front to that listing agent. They may look at that and go, okay, if you're going to put this little quality into it, then how difficult is it going to be to work with you in the future? And it sounds crazy. You would think it's apples to apples, paper and paper. Like, how is this going to affect it? But for those of you who have done deals in the past, or even looked at the workmanship of other agents, how do you not get feedback just based off of the quality of their work? I'm going to take your roaring silence as agreement. But it's true. Just like we dress professionally, we want to make sure that we're presenting ourselves professionally when it comes to those offers. So again, on the buyer side, we want to try to be creative with it, but we also want to make sure that we're having those conversations with our clients ahead of time to set those expectations, so that when I call that listing agent and I find out those favorable terms, I can return to my clients and say, this is what they're going to find most favorable. We talked about this before. If this is a home that you really deeply want, here are the terms that they said it's going to work for it. How do you feel about this? Are you willing to lose a home over not being flexible over this? Or is this something that you're willing to walk away from because these aren't terms that you're comfortable with? And I always try to phrase it to where I'm letting them know, if you're not willing to be flexible, then you're also not really wanting this home. You know what I mean? It's not like we're asking them to give up their firstborn, or it's not like we're asking them to spend $50,000 more. We're simply saying, let's be creative about how we are presenting this. So for those who have had multiple offers listed or accepted before, what is some of the terms that you've used before?
For the buy side?
For the buy side.
Yeah, waiving remedy and possession time.
Possession time?
Yeah.
Has anybody ever had to get super creative in regards to offering to cover cost for the seller? Has anybody ever had that before? Mm-hmm. I had a multiple offer situation. It was for somebody on my team, actually. And this was when I first started real estate. I thought it was ludicrous at the time, but apparently it's more common than I think. but the buyers actually offered to cover some of the costs, closing cost for the sellers in it was the way it was written into it. So basically to make their offer more favorable. And so it was basically saying, hey, we're going to come in at this because we can be approved for it at the asking price. We're going to waive contingencies on remedy requests as well as contingencies on appraisal, because they're going to asking, their agent advised them that it was going to definitely comp for that amount. And they said that they were willing to pay up to $2,500, I think it was, in closing costs for the agent. And they were willing to, within that cost, pay for the title, or not the title, the home warranty out of pocket as well. So she got really creative with it. I don't know if you guys have ever, Jill, you know Suzette. Suzette is insanely creative when it comes to getting her way of things. But it was a tough market, especially even a couple of years ago, especially for those homes that are under the 250 range. And so she really wanted to make sure that they were getting that number that they wanted out of it without pushing the bounds of that appraisal. So if you do have a client though that has excessive money or is able to put more money down, that's definitely a conversation you'll have with them. I currently have a buyer right now that she can put 20% down on her mortgage, but she's within a really tight budget. So one of the conversations her lender and I had with her is, your loan would allow you to put less than 20% down. The PMI wouldn't be that much. However, because your pricing on your home is so little, you potentially could take that money to go in over asking and waive a contingency for appraisal clause up to $10,000 and have the cash on hand to do that. It's a little outside the box of norm, and it's definitely not typical. And that was kind of a difficult conversation to have, but bringing her lender into it and saying, what are some solutions that we have? Because she has a budget, her budget is $215,000, which we all know is a very tight margin, especially for a home that's going to be fairly decent, not need a lot of work. She's not very handy, so it's definitely going to be something that it's going to be hard to find. But having that conversation was, what are some ways that we can get super creative with finding out how we can get that home for you? And are you comfortable with that? What's that pain threshold? Okay, I have been talking constantly, and I feel like I'm just like verbally dumping on you guys. So what are some questions, concerns, comments, quibbles, real life situations you've come across?
Isn't that smart though? You reduce the selling price. I mean, you pay the same amount, but the taxable amount will be less by paying the closing costs.
That's very true. That's very, very true. And that was, again, Suzette's very creative when it comes to that.
That would be smart.
Jill just asked, do you offer appraisal gap coverage? If so, how do you have that conversation with your client? Ooh, Jill, that's a fantastic question. So I always explain the process for buying a home to clients, even if they've already bought before, because I just simply say to them, you've been through this before, or if you're brand new, I want to talk about the appraisal part of it. And I open the conversation with, we can go in at asking price, and I always pull my comps. People, pull your numbers, know your numbers. Go into it with your due diligence. You've got the resources, you've got the know-how, make sure you know your numbers. But when we go into it and I say, okay, the comps pull and comps show that this will go for asking price. So I'm not really worried about appraisal, but if we want to go in over appraisal and we want to say we want to go over asking, we can say, okay, we're willing to go up to 5,000 over asking and we'll cover that cost up to $5,000 or up to XYZ amount. On the reverse, if we look at a property that is overpriced, but is still within the range of, let's say it's a $200,000 property priced out, but we know pulling comps that most likely will only appraise for 190, or that we know that it's an FHA loan or VA loan, which we know are historically always appraised lower. We can say something along in the contract that states, we'll offer a $5,000 appraisal gap contingency, meaning that we will pay $5,000 over what the appraisal value is. Does that make sense? It's still going to have to be cash in hand though. Please, please, please keep this in mind, because the banks are only willing to cover exactly what the appraisal comes back. So they will need to have that cash in hand, and they need to understand that cash in hand. And I'm going to tell you from experience, because this happened to me in the past, and I, as a listing agent, this was the buyer. He came in with an appraisal gap contingency. He was an FHA loan. The appraisal came in under what the asking price was, even though the comps were pulled, and the comps pulled appropriately. I had multiple people pull it. I had a third-party appraiser come in and verify the number, but it was the FHA, and what the FHA says goes. It's unfortunate sometimes. What they did have though in the contract, because it was a multiple offer situation, is they were willing to go $5,000 over appraisal. That does not mean that you don't have to also pay all those additional closing costs. In his mind, for some reason, he thought that the $5,000 meant that it also covered closing costs and everything else like that. So we only had to come to the table with $5,000. And I don't know where the communication breakdown was, but I want to make sure that they understand that you still have to come to with $5,000 on top of your closing cost, and that your title company and lender should have all that information for you. Jill, did that fully explain it? Yeah, okay. I've had this happen back in January, actually. I get a call from the buyer's agent, and he goes, my clients had pre-signed the night before, and he calls me and he goes, we're gonna have to extend our closing by a day. And I go, excuse me? And he goes, well, my client apparently didn't understand the breakdown of this, and like, okay, cool. Let's move on, but how are we gonna fix this? But that's offering appraisal gap coverage. You always want to explain to them, like, this is going to be an out-of-pocket expense for you. This is not going to be something that you will be able to cover with that mortgage. Any other questions, comments, or quibbles? No? Okay. Is this helpful for everybody? Yes, no, or maybe so? To those who are awake and paying attention. This is so exciting, people. I mean, how do you not just like get over the top about multiple offers? Okay, etiquette wise, Paige, you brought a huge major bonus points on this one. You get like my brownie points in my book. Being taught to always communicate with the listing agent, always communicate with your client. What are some other etiquettes that you guys have found on either side that you feel is very important from the buyer's perspective agent when communicating multiple offer situations?
What's your feeling on escalation clauses, Liz?
Personally, I love them. They get very complicated on the listing side sometimes.
Right.
The reason I say that is because of this. I have had in the past, sorry, we're going to switch gears to listing for just a second because this will kind of explain it. I've had in the past, I have multiple offers. One of the offers came in at like a couple grand over asking, but the terms were beautiful and like waive this. They just wanted the home. This other offer that came in was way over asking, like a number that I knew would never hit appraisal. And it had a contingency clause in it. And then I had another offer that came in that was, the one that had a contingency clause was 10,000 over. The secondary one was like 25,000 over. This was a home, by the way, that was listed for like $140,000, guys. So this is not the norm. It needed a lot of work, by the way. But the problem with it is the escalation clause basically was like, they'll go up and above this amount as long as it's for this highest offer of this one, and I'm sorry, I was reading Christina's thing. The other thing about it, it got super messy because the terms that they were stating would technically push me to choose or have the clients choose a certain offer based off of the numbers of a higher asking price, but the terms and conditions weren't as great as the other listing. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So they can get really funky and messy as you're trying to kind of hash it out. Honestly, as a listing agent, I put it in an Excel spreadsheet so I can try to put like apples to apples to everybody, because sometimes it gets a little murky and muddy and walking through what those conditions are. I personally, as a buyer's agent, love escalation clauses, especially for the purpose of, hey, we're going to go over asking, but only to the bare minimum that we have to. And I phrase it that way to clients, especially ones who are a little gun shy about going over asking. But the listing side of it, it can sometimes get a little murky based off of escalation clauses don't take into account condition, like other contingencies. They just take into account price. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you're going to have a contingency, a escalation clause on the buyer side of it, make sure it's reasonable. Just work with the other terms and conditions. Don't just throw money at something. That's not the way. It doesn't work with kids. It doesn't work with life. Don't just throw money at stuff. Try to be creative with it. What's going to make the transaction easiest, and think about what that life is going to be like for you and that listing agent of getting through it. Christina said, make sure you tell everyone the results. I had a situation this weekend that the listing agent didn't let me know who got the house. I saw the listing go pending and had to contact her. Christina, I think that is a fantastic point, and definitely a big learning point. Let's talk about communication from the listing side of it. We're going to switch gears, guys. Okay, etiquette as a listing agent. I've had this before. I've had somebody actually in PC. She's brand new. It was her first listing. This is, I think back in December. And she got multiple offers in, and they chose an offer before communicating to everybody else that they had multiple offers in. Let that sink in for a second. You're not doing due diligence for your client. You're not doing due diligence and making sure you negotiating terms and conditions. I think she was just so excited about having multiple offers that they just went ahead and chose and didn't communicate, and that caused some friction between her and the other agents. And so this kind of speaks and parlays right into what Christina is saying. You as an agent need to be a decent person and professional, which means you need to communicate to everybody. I typically, especially through showing time, agents who have submitted offers, just so that it doesn't show like everybody that submitted offers with it, because some people are a little weird about privacy. So I try to use that as a tool and resource, but I will send out as soon as I get multiple offers in to people that either are scheduled to have it, have had one, or who have contacted me about potentially wanting to see. I let them know we have an offer on the table right now. We are accepting highest and best offers by XYZ date and time. I will typically try to make it 24-hour period or like the next day, because I want to be fair to everybody, and I want to get the best deal in for a client. You probably have come across this, so let's talk about this situation. I recently had an individual, I had a listing on the market. It went on the market on Friday morning. We had an open house scheduled for Sunday. We had 7 showings on Saturday, a handful on Sunday. We got an offer in on Saturday morning. They submitted it, I think, by like 11, 12 noon, and they wanted a response by 4 p.m. that night. I contacted the buyer's agent and I said, thank you very much for your offer. I'm asking for a request on response time. My clients need more time for us to allow other agents to submit offers. We've had other showings into it, as well as we do have the open house tomorrow, and they are requesting to still host that. Some agents aren't as bold or want to kind of keep things close to chest, and that's entirely up to how you want to do it. I just like being very open with people about my reasoning behind things, because I find transparency makes an easier transaction, and not everybody's like that. And if that's not your thing, that's your style. I totally understand. The agent reacted perfectly fine with it, then sends it back and goes, well, 10 p.m. tonight. Okay, well, that conversation didn't go as I was anticipating, but okay, at least I can work with this. So I responded back and forth. Long story short, they ended up keeping the original offer they had. They didn't send a higher best. And on top of this, guys, it was like half written. Back to the point I made before, don't give me a sloppy offer, please. It wasn't a Keller Williams agent, by the way. So I said to them, my clients are still having other people come in. We're going to extend for the highest and best by tomorrow after the open house. The open house ended at 3. I just basically was like, this is what we're doing. Thank you very much for your offer, but I really want to make sure that we have it. My clients are requesting that this is what they're doing. I have to respect what my clients are requesting. And it puts you in an uncomfortable position. They may not always react really well, and you kind of have to be prepared for that. But our job is to do what our clients ask us to do, well within the legal realms and ethical realms, people. Long story short, we ended up getting multiple offers. Some of them were great, some of them were not so great, but we ended up actually choosing the one that wasn't the highest price but had the best terms. But the point of it is that the agent that I originally sent that first offer in called and gave me an earful. And in real estate, for those newbies, y'all will get some very thick skin if you don't have it. That basically said, well, we're trying to close this deal before the open house tomorrow and other offers can get in. That was my tactic. I said, I totally understand that tactic. I'm glad you're doing due diligence for your clients, but I have to do due diligence for mine. That's my responsibility, is my fiduciary responsibility is my clients. Yours is your clients. So I'm doing what's best for them. And you need to be very okay with having these conversations. Paige, have you had this before?
No, I know, like, it's a tactic for buying agents to say, put the shortest amount of time in your offer, but you do have to respect what the listing agent was requiring of you.
Yeah, and it's a tough one because you want to make sure, I at least always want to make sure I'm playing nicely with others.
Right, right.
This is a side conversation, but very important. Your reputation will follow you in this real estate world. It is a small world. You want to play fairly, you want to play well with others, but again, when bottom line comes down to, you need to do what's best for your client, and that was what was best for them. So going back to the actual offer that they chose and to following up with Christina on it, when they did choose an offer, I then emailed out via Showing Time, because again, it was the easiest medium for me to use, to let them know, thank you so much for your offer. It was very kind of you. Unfortunately, my clients have chosen another offer at this time. We didn't let them know who exactly it was at the moment, just for privacy reasons. And to kind of address that for just a moment, because I want to make sure, because for privacy reasons, one, we're just actually not really allowed to tell who got the house, technically. We can't tell them the price. We can't really disclose anything. That's all private. Afterwards, they can look it up on Tax Realist all they want and Facebook stalk them to their heart's content. But we can just let them know another offer was chosen and selected. The reason that being is that there's like a safety concern and privacy concern about letting people know who exactly got that offer. Does that make sense to folks? Yeah. Because I mean, I can just foresee a situation turning ugly or something happening and. So we want to certainly communicate to everybody else that the offer went to another person, but we never want to communicate who exactly those details are. So Christina, to kind of go to your point with it, we really want to make sure that we tell and communicate that another offer has been selected, but we want to be really careful about the information that we're sharing about the deal. Does that make sense? Yes. Yes. Okay. I know it's not always the answer we want to hear, but I just want to make sure that it's a fine line that somebody sometimes walk a bit with trying to share information. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm starting to lose my voice. Okay. So on the listing side, better terms and conditions. Jill, you've had a listing so far, right? Yeah. Did you have multiple offers on your listing? No. Okay. I can't hear her, but I'm just looking at like head bobbing going on over here. Yeah. She looks a bobblehead now. So multiple offers in a listing situation. Let's talk about the etiquette of this one. Just like we kind of addressed before, make sure you're openly communicating with all the agents that have either had showings or going to have showings, no matter how far out that they're scheduled. We want to make sure that we are communicating effectively. You don't have to overshare details. That's entirely all right. Other agents will push and they will ask, hey, is this person, what's the amount? What number are they giving you? You don't always have to do that. And a side note, I apologize immensely. I just thought of this, to go back to the buyer side. I'm sorry, as a listing side, this sounds a little outside the norm. However, you are well within your right to contact the buyer's lender and ask them if they're a good lender, or if they're going to be a good, if the loan will go through. Geez Louise, I can't think of the words. It's a little outside the norm, but in the past, there has been multiple offers. Somebody came in with a very attractive offer. I contacted lenders. I contacted the lender. He basically said they barely squeaked in with kind of bad credit. one small mishap and underwriting won't approve it. They're not going to be a good person to select for multiple offers. I was floored that they would share that information with me, but I was glad that they did, and we went with a different offer. But don't be afraid to ask questions, because legally they'll stay well within the realms of what they're supposed to do, or they should. And if they don't, that's boo-boo on them. But as a listing agent, again, you're supposed to be doing due diligence. So don't be afraid to reach out. Absolutely. And also don't be afraid to request updated pre-approval letters. And if it's a cash offer, absolutely every single 100% time legally require proof of funds. If a buyer agent pushes back, you need to basically let them know, I'm legally asking for, or legally required to ask for proof of funds before we can move forward with this purpose. If they continually want to push back, get your broker involved. Absolutely 100%. This was not me personally, this was another agent. We were having this conversation. Another agent, basically, buyer agent, came in with a cash offer. Listing agent did her due diligence, said, I'd like proof of funds. Buyer agent said, don't you know who my client is? She goes, no, I don't. Sorry. And she goes, well, he's very, very wealthy. Fantastic. Then he's more than happy to provide proof of funds. And there was continual pushback. So don't be afraid to push for that. And don't be afraid to ask for questions. But back to the main event, open communication is going to be huge. Make sure you're talking to people, communicating with people. It's professional, it's courteous, and it's doing great for your clients. And then proof of cash. That's a fantastic question, Christina. Proof of cash is typically going to be a statement from your bank. So if you have a client that is doing a cash offer, make sure that you're talking with their primary money person, their financial person, whomever that, it could be a bank, it sometimes can be investor, however they're proving that proof of funds. If you contact them, you can say, we're doing a cash offer in a home, we need proof of funds, and they should have an official document that will state, and it needs to be like on letterhead and have the contact information for the agent to reach out to. Does that answer? Okay, perfect. Kind of liking this chat feature over here. But it's we want to make sure, again, we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's on this one. And then lastly, as we're going through the entire process, always, always, always ask for backup offers. If you have a multiple offer situation and you want to reach out to clients, especially those offers that were super great, they may not always accept, but make sure you reach out and you ask. We are accepting backup offers at this time. All right, perfect. Bye, Jill. I'll see you later, honey. So there's some fantastic things that you guys can do with that when it comes to the backup offers. And we always want to, again, do due diligence for our clients and ask for those, because we all know that not everything's perfect and something might fall through. And we want to make sure that we have something in the works, for it. And on a side note, I've had multiple offers where I had a backup offer, and this sounds very silly, but it made me less afraid of pushing back in regards to doing the best for my client, because I wasn't afraid of losing the deal as I think I would have been before, which isn't my own limiting beliefs, and it's the reality of it, quite frankly, not just the reality of it. Okay, who has any questions, comments, quibbles, concerns?
Don't you think from a buyer side too, like you can offer that up? Like if you didn't get it, you can go to the listing agent and say, can I put in a backup offer?
Absolutely. And
Sometimes
make sure
they don't ask.
Exactly. And some of them don't. Guys, especially if you're new, don't think every agent's perfect. Please, for the love of God, do your due diligence. But yeah, absolutely. If you are a buyer and it's a multiple offer situation and you get that email, hey, yours wasn't chosen, absolutely call them. Make sure you okay with your clients first, but say, hey, we would love to be the backup offer on this one. Who else? I'm going to start singing Hit Me With Your Best Shot pretty soon, and I cannot sing. No? Okay. Well, we ate up 40 minutes of our hour time. So I can continue with anybody has any other questions. I'm more than happy to talk about it. We can have open dialogue, or we can end the session because I don't like filling up empty time just to fill up time. Paige, you've been kind of my rock star on this one with your lime green walls.
I have a love-hate. I'm like, sometimes I want to repaint it. Sometimes it's really cool.
If you were not a realtor, or as a realtor, and you walked into your house, what would you say to you before putting it on the market?
I'd paint them. I love them. But my mom walked in the first time. She goes, God, that ugly kitchen. Because I had them painted more neutral. But I like it. And then now I'm like,
I think being stuck in the house with COVID, everyone's kind of like hating looking at their walls right now.
Right.
Okay, guys. Christina, thank you so much for asking some really awesome questions. If you guys have any other comments, questions, concerns, or quibbles, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to talk to you or answer anything for you. And yeah, I will let you guys get on to this wonderful, beautiful, insanely hot afternoon. As long as no one has anything else I can add to it, I want to make sure you guys are getting as much as possible out of all of this. And I hope you guys got more information out of this than you came in with it.
Thanks, Liz.
No,
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Paige. All right, I'm going to end this and I will see you guys later.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.